I'm technology correspondent Lisa Martin. Today's episode is all about VMware with Mr. Backup, talking about hybrid cloud trends. Please welcome our first guest from VMware. We've got Ivan Oprencak, the Senior Director of Product Marketing for VMware Cloud on AWS. Ivan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
And he's back, Mr. Backup, W. Curtis Preston, Druva's Chief Technical Evangelist. Curtis, it's great to have you back on the show.
Happy to be here.
So in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to spend that time talking to you guys primarily about three things. The first one is really market trends with hybrid cloud. Ivan's going to give us his perspective on what he's seeing, what VMware is seeing. Then we're going to talk about use cases and some of the benefits that customers are getting. And then we'll wrap it up with best practices for hybrid cloud data protection. Curtis will give us his take on that. As always, we encourage you to drop us a question in the LinkedIn live stream, and we will address it while we are live. If you join late or friends do, don't worry, you can play this on demand as soon as we are done. All right, Ivan, first question for you. Talk to us about some of the things that you're seeing with respect to hybrid cloud trends as we are in this very weird 2020 timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would summarize it. There's kind of three broad trends that we're seeing. So the first trend is that the adoption of hybrid cloud has increasing. Ever since I've been involved in this VMware Cloud on AWS service with VMware, which is over 3 years at this point. Initially, when we started, about 75% of our customers indicated that hybrid cloud was their preferred way of adopting public cloud. When we did the same surveys just a year ago, over 90% of our customers are indicating that 90% that hybrid cloud is the preferred way for them to adopt public cloud. So general adoption of hybrid cloud is the one trend. The other trend that we're seeing is customers are increasingly adopting multiple clouds. So it used to be that they were focusing on single public cloud provider as a way to connect their on-premises environment to public cloud, but we're increasingly seeing adoption of multiple clouds. So that would be another trend. And the third one is a more recent one related to COVID-19. We have seen since the beginning of this year just increased adoption of public cloud because our customers, either their supply chains were constrained or not able to get to infrastructure capacity very quickly, or they didn't have staff on premises to do things they needed very quickly. So we've seen an increase of adoption of public cloud as an extension of what they had on premises.
And in terms of time frame, the last 5 months have been an accelerant for many things. You're talking about the trends, from year 3 to year 1, and now this big acceleration. Give us a flavor of some of the types of customers that VMware is working with in the last few months that are rapidly adopting public cloud and expanding their hybrid footprint.
So in general, what I've seen over the years, the adoption of public clouds was very broad across various different industry and segments that VMware typically serves. But more specifically, recently we've seen acceleration in certain segments. Healthcare, very obviously, they were strained with helping with the COVID-19 crisis. Healthcare needed access, for example, to VDI. To be able to administer all the patients that were coming in. So we've definitely seen an increase in the healthcare industry, but we also see an increase in banking as customers do less face-to-face business, and then they rely more on online and transactions. So we've seen an increase in there, and as well as government. That's been another big sector that's seen a significant increase in just this year alone.
Curtis, from your perspective, you talk with Druva customers all the time. What are some of the trends that you're seeing with respect to this accelerant that COVID-19 is delivering to Ivan's point, customers in many verticals?
Yeah, so from our perspective, we're a data protection provider, right? So a service provider of data protection. So the main things that we're talking to them about is as they move their facilities around, as they burst into the cloud, as they, when I was talking about, for example, healthcare facilities having to use additional computing resources in the cloud, wherever they end up moving their data, that's where we end up having to talk to them, right? So the biggest thing that we're seeing is them just making sure as they migrate into the cloud, or if they burst into the cloud, or if they start using additional services that they weren't using before. So, for example, if they weren't using Office 365, for example, and they were an on-prem Exchange services environment. If they decide to begin their cloud journey by moving to Office 365 and saying, listen, administering an email server is not part of our core competency, nor does it add that much value to the business to actually be the one administering that server. They decide to do Office 365, and then they come to us to make sure that that data continues to be protected in the same way that it was when it was on-prem.
Excellent. If you're just joining us, Lisa Martin with Ivan Oprencak of VMware and W. Curtis Preston of Druva. We're talking about VMware and Mr Backup that are talking about hybrid cloud trends. We just covered some of the big things that Ivan from VMware's perspective and Curtis from Druva's are seeing in the market and some of the accelerants in the last 5 months. Let's move on to topic number 2. Ivan, use cases, like for example, cloud migration for VMware customers. Dive into some of those key use cases that you're helping customers to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. As I have conversation with our customers, and as numerous surveys that we do support, that we do tell us about half of the customers that we're seeing have what I call a cloud first strategy, where they're essentially on a journey to adopt public cloud longer term. Now, how far they're going to be able to execute on that journey just varies by customers, but based on what they're telling us, majority customers, even if they identify themselves as a cloud first customers, are expecting to have a significant on-premises presence, 3 years down the road. So to them, hybrid cloud is a bit of a point in time. However, that time frame is very long. So that's about half of the customers. And what hybrid clouds enables them to do, it allows them to simplify and reduce risk and make the cost of the migration much lower than had to go take their applications and refactor them and change them and modify them for a native public cloud. So that's about half the customer. The other half the customers, in terms of the use cases, those customers are committed to what I call a cloud fit strategy, where they're opportunistically using cloud for specific use cases that they're having a hard time achieving with their static on-premises infrastructure. So these are use cases, for example, the ability to burst workloads when they need additional capacity because of seasonal needs. They're going to new regions. They need to stand up a new data center. They need a flexible dev desk environment when they need to protect their data in the cloud. So those are some of the cloud fit strategy customer the use cases that we see across those.
And where are you having those conversations in terms of the actual customer organization? Are they across the board? Are they at the C-suite, especially as so many things have changed so rapidly for customers in every industry? Have you seen that conversation shift, Ivan, like up to the C-suite, for example?
Yeah, definitely. And so I think from VMware perspective, the traditional infrastructure and operations part of the IT organization that's where we have a lot of relationship. That's where a lot of our buyers are. So our conversation initially, we're very much starting in that part of the IT organizations. But over the years, I've been working on this. Definitely, the conversation has moved up to the C-suite. It's a board level discussion at this point. But also, VMware itself is also getting included into discussions that the applications teams are having. Often a lot of these cloud decisions are driven by applications. Applications are the lifeblood of the business, and as customers are deciding where they deploy their applications, whether they stay on premises, whether they go to cloud, whether they deploy them on the edge, we're increasingly seeing and are getting involved into those conversations as well.
And from your perspective, I've been continuing on with you for another second here. When customers are looking at hybrid cloud, especially those that are, I don't want to say legacy businesses, but yeah, I guess that's a good way to define it. As things have changed so rapidly this year, for businesses that haven't really done a good job on pivoting towards digital transformation, who are now at risk of going out of business, is hybrid cloud kind of a toe dip in the water? for businesses like that really need to accelerate a digital business transformation?
Absolutely. So one of the kind of biggest benefits of hybrid cloud is that consistency. It enables you to get to cloud much quickly, and especially in the current environment where we're living under so many constraints, and the traditional rules have been thrown out. So hybrid cloud really gives you the ability to get to cloud very quickly. You don't need to learn new skills, build new processes, and develop new tools. It gives you that speed. It also reduces the risk of things going wrong once you adopt cloud. So definitely, and from cost perspective, that is a significant benefit. And just looking at the environment around us, and what's going on in the economy. That's something that we find our customers are definitely finding attractive, and helps them with that transition, accelerates that transition.
Curtis, let's go into our third topic, which is your recommendations, best practices, and what you're seeing with respect to customers needing to protect those hybrid cloud environments.
Thanks. So I would say the first thing, and I shouldn't have to say this, but just don't assume that your data is protected because it's in the cloud, because that is absolutely not a correct assumption. Whether we're talking an IaaS vendor, a PaaS vendor, a SaaS vendor, your data is not being backed up in any way that I would consider to be any sort of traditional backup definition, right? Which would be the 3-2-1 rule, at least three versions of your data on at least two different media, one of which is somewhere else. Any features that you see being provided by a product like my Office 365, or even snapshots, sort of regular snapshots in typical cloud vendors, that data is all being stored either in your account or right next to your servers or your VMs that you're protecting. So make sure that data is sent somewhere else, right? Yes, of course, Druva is one of the places that you can send somewhere else, but however you protect your data, just make sure that it's being done in a way that gets the data out of the system being protected. And that isn't happening for any of these services if you're using anything built in at this point. There may be exceptions to that rule, but none of the big ones, right? The three big cloud vendors, the big SaaS vendors like Office 365, G Suite, Salesforce, Slack, all of these folks, any of the features that you're seeing that look like backup do not meet the basic definition of backup. So that's the number one. Well, I'll stop there for a moment.
And we've talked with a number of customers recently, Curtis, that in fact, we did a LinkedIn Live episode, I think it was last month, on Salesforce ending support for data recovery service. And oftentimes when I'm talking with customers about their SaaS applications, whether it's Microsoft 365 or Salesforce or G Suite, there is that shared responsibility model that isn't necessarily discussed. And there is sort of an assumption that, well, it's in the cloud, it's backed up. But to your point, we do hear more and more customers saying, you're right, they're going to work on the infrastructure and securing and protecting that, but the data is ours. And especially if it's, think Salesforce business critical data, or even data stored in OneDrive, or in exchange in emails with the executive team, protecting that is absolutely business critical. Ivan, in terms of looking at data protection for VMware environments, we talk with a lot of Druva customers who are doing that as well in conjunction with SaaS applications. So talk to us about, protecting VMware on-prem, protecting VMware cloud. From VMware's perspective, what are some of the things that you recommend to your customers?
So in terms of data protection, so hybrid cloud, just to be very, very clear about it, customers have both presence on premises as well as in public cloud, and they place their applications where those applications are best to run, or optimal to run, whether it's from cost perspective or it's from performance perspective. So we see customers having presence across on-premises cloud, and increasingly edge. That's the other general trend that we're seeing. And so in terms of data protection, irrespective of where your applications are running, where your workloads are running, consistency is really what matters. It will reduce your costs. It will increase your operational efficiency. So that would be one thing I would be looking for. Having a data protection that is consistent irrespective of what environments that you're running in. So if you're running on vSphere on premises, you have same type of data protection that you're having in VMware Cloud on AWS. And also, just from cost perspective, being able to take advantage of moving the data into cloud, the data that's being protected, and leveraging cloud services such as the one that Druva has, helps customers with costs and with being able to have a more flexible data protection environment.
Curtis, one of the things Ivan talked about, and you and I talk about this all the time with Druva customers and internally, is the cloud first strategy or cloud migration approach. Your perspective, looking at customers that are running VMs on-prem and VMware in the cloud, from a data protection perspective, if a business is cloud first, what makes the most sense for protecting those VMs?
Well, this is going to sound like an answer that to a hammer everything looks like a nail, but I do think that DR, one of the things that I think that is the best workload for the cloud is DR. And if you're going to, because it literally solves so many problems that either not having a DR system or having a traditional DR system creates. And so DR is the ultimate workload for the cloud. And if you're going to do DR in the cloud, then it would make sense that your backup data be in the cloud. So it doesn't make sense to me for that reason, and also for some of the reasons that Ivan mentioned. It doesn't make sense to me to have an on-prem backup infrastructure if your ultimate destination for disaster is the cloud. I do think you should have a consistent, just like Ivan mentioned, I do think you should have a consistent data protection across, whether you're talking, something like VMware Cloud on AWS or VMware on-prem. I do think you should have a consistent thing. But I guess what I'm saying is, if you're ultimately going to perform your disaster recovery in the cloud, such as the way Druva does, then why not just use a cloud-based data protection system? I don't understand why someone today, if they're going to do DR in the cloud, why they would purchase an on-prem system at this point.
Consistency is very much welcomed during this crazy time. But you talk about disaster recovery, Curtis, and of course, many businesses, whether it's a university or a retailer or a supply manufacturer, are used to sort of the traditional disasters of, natural disasters. Well, now we're dealing with a microbial disaster that nobody has seen before in 100 years. And so this has been an accelerant of a number of things. But to your point about, if there's a cloud first strategy and you need to react quickly and pivot, but you can't get into a data center like what we've seen in the last 5 months, that brings on a whole other set of challenges that really put businesses at considerable risk.
Agreed. And it's an on-prem backup system is yet another system that you would have to maintain in a COVID type situation. We've heard of some of our competitors having difficulty shipping devices, et cetera. And so the idea of having a service-based, a SaaS-based system, data protection system that's in the cloud, it's at least one thing that you would not have to worry in times of COVID. Right, you still, if you have an on-prem, if you have a hybrid model, and you probably have a hybrid model, if you have a hybrid model, you still have to worry about physically maintaining any infrastructure that you've left in your data center. But at least you wouldn't have to worry about your data protection system.
One very quick comment there. I can confirm. Like I talk to customers basically on a daily basis. The amount of customers that I've talked to in the last 6 months that really want to go away from that do it your own backup and data protection, really rely on the services, has just skyrocketed. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, Ivan, thanks so much for your time. We know you're very busy with the virtual VMworld that's coming up in about a month or so, but we really appreciate you joining our program today.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And Curtis, always great to have you on the program. Thanks for coming back.
Happy to be here.
And for those of you watching, we thank you. You've just watched episode 8. If you haven't seen any of the previous episodes, not to worry, we'll drop them in the chat here. We thank you for your time. If you came in late, don't worry. This is going to be on demand as soon as we wrap the live show. We will see you in 2 weeks from today with a new topic.